missiles being launched into Iran. I'm joined by Greg Karlstrom, Middle East correspondent for The Economist. Good morning to you, Greg.
Good morning to you.
I can appreciate this is a very early stage. I mean, the actual events, as far as we can see them, I mean, I'm just seeing plumes of smoke coming off buildings in Tehran. There are also very premature reports, I should say, of the Ayatollah fleeing. Now, I've got no way of validating those at the moment. What are you hearing? What do you make of events thus far?
So we really don't know much yet about targets. We do know that this was a joint American-Israeli strike. It was initially being reported as just Israel taking what it called preemptive action against Iran, but the Americans were not only involved in coordinating this, but carried out their own strikes in Iran as well. Some of these strikes took place in an area of Tehran that is close to the presidential compound, close to the Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei's house. But we don't know if any of those officials were present. The Supreme Leader has largely been in hiding since the 12-day war in June. I think it's very likely that he was not at home, that he is in a bunker or some sort of secure location right now. So if this was an attempt to decapitate the Iranian leadership, to kill senior political or military officials, we don't know yet who, if anyone, may have been killed.
Potential for retaliatory strikes? How realistic is it that those strikes can even penetrate through to Israel?
So I think quite likely that there will be Iranian retaliation. The Israeli army, the Home Front Command, the branch of the army that's in charge of national preparedness in Israel, has told Israelis to stay close to shelters. It's put limits on public gatherings. So the expectation in Israel is that there will be missile and drone attacks. And we saw last summer during the 12-day war, Israel's air defense is pretty good at shooting these things down, but it is not a hermetic shield around Israel. There were missiles that got through, and it's likely that that will happen again. And then I think the other question is, will Iran retaliate not only against Israel, but against American targets in the region? Will it attack American military bases in Gulf states? Will it carry out attacks on American ships that are in the Persian Gulf or in the Sea of Oman? And again, we just don't know yet the size of this attack, and therefore it's hard to gauge the size of the Iranian retaliation.
We're just getting, Greg, reports from the US saying that they expect this attack to be far more extensive than the American strikes last June, which were specifically aimed at destroying Iran's sort of nuclear facilities and its capabilities. Can I read from that, can you deduce from that we are talking about an attempt at regime change? And the obvious follow-up, what will follow?
I think it's possible that is the goal. I think Israel would like that to be the goal. We saw during the 12-day war, they were certainly trying to destabilize the regime, if not topple it entirely. And when I've spoken to Israeli officials in the months since the war, they've been very clear that if this happens again, that the goal will be regime change. We don't know if that is Donald Trump's perspective on this. He's at times over the past 2 months suggested that he would like to change the regime. Other times he said the targets would be more limited to what remains of Iran's nuclear facilities and its missile program and its military capabilities. So we don't know what he's planning to do. But what I'm hearing from the Israelis and from the Americans over the past hour is this is going to be a more intense start than it was back in June, in the early days of that war. The next 24 to 48 hours, they're saying there will be quite heavy bombardment of Iran. Whether that's a sign that this is heading for regime change, or whether that's a sign that Donald Trump just doesn't have a stomach for a long campaign and sort of wants to do a big showy thing for 48 hours and then look for an off-ramp, I think it's just too early to say.
I mean, history tells us that enforced regime change in the Middle East often comes with unexpected and very negative consequences. So I am fascinated because I read a lot about regime change and very little about what regime change might look like. Now, Syria, for example, seems to be going quite well, but there are definitely problems still within Syria. the idea that you can cut the head off the beast and the beast suddenly mutates into a friendly puppy, I find that difficult to believe. What can you describe what you imagine regime change in Iran may look like if say Khamenei has fled already?
Right, and Syria seems to be going well now, but let's not forget it took 15 years of horrific civil war to get to that point. I mean, if Khamenei were to be killed or were to be removed from power in the days to come, who would take his place? I think the likeliest candidate is going to be someone from the Revolutionary Guard, someone from the security establishment in Iran. The Revolutionary Guard have increased their power in recent years, not just their political and military power, but their economic power as well. They preside over a vast economic empire in Iran, and they would seem a likely contender to replace the supreme leader. I'm not sure that's a positive outcome from the perspective of the United States or Israel or Western countries. You're likely to have a regime that is less theocratic, less religious, yes, but every bit as hostile to Western interests in the region. And then beyond that, I mean, there are, this hopeful talk that someone like Reza Pahlavi, the exiled son of the former Shah, could swoop back into Iran and somehow take control of the country. I just find that very unlikely. I think it's not going to be an exiled political figure. It's not going to be someone who hasn't set foot inside of Iran in half a century. The person who will take power if the regime is changed is going to be a person who already has power inside of the system in Tehran.
Missiles raining down on Iran. 5 sites in Iran, we believe, have been struck so far. The expert guests we've received counsel from so far suggest that the more interesting strikes are those on Tehran, which have fallen close to where Ali Khamenei may have called home, but we believe that he has been in bunkers for months now. There have been reports that he has already fled. I mean, they are unconfirmed. I note that back in early January, there was a suggestion that he'd already got some kind of arrangement to flee to Russia in the event of events like this. Let's speak to Atik in Windsor, who's on the phones. Good morning to you, Atik.
Good morning, Matthew. Lovely show. Great to hear you again.
Nice
Thanks
to speak to
you.
What do you make of events this morning?
Angry. I expected it to happen. It seems to be the new way now that they always start a new war on a Friday night when everybody's out drunk and hungover on a Saturday morning. I'm angry that they've chosen to ignore the warnings that were given out by both sides. We were led to believe that it's the nuclear weapons. Apparently, America destroyed those in the last outing, so I'm not entirely sure what this is about. Well, actually, I do know what it's about, I think. I think it's to do with the last 12-day war that Iran had with Israel. And during that war, Iran used hypersonic missiles that the West, America, and Israel could not defend against. And so they had to go in and take those out too.
You don't see it as being assisting the people of Iran in overthrowing a brutally repressive regime?
No, not at all. Let's not sell that story again.
Is it for Israel and the United States or anybody to assist the people of Iran in overthrowing a brutally repressive regime? So it's just you believe it's just for the Iranian people?
Matthew, we like to say it's an oppressive regime, but if you flip that coin, don't you think they think the Americans are a repressive regime?
Atik,
who gives the Americans and the Israelis the right to police the world? And also, can I make you and your caller and your listeners aware of something called the Samson option? I believe you need to tell everybody in this country what that is, because Israel holds on to nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Israel has a nuclear weapon in every direction of every country. So if it feels...
How you know that? I do not know, Atik, because the one thing I know about the Israeli nuclear weapons is they don't allow any independent inspections in. Atik, pleasure talking to you. Let's cross now to Alan Fisher. Alan, who's a freelance journalist operating in northern Israel. Nice to see you, Alan. What is the feeling amongst Israelis this morning, waking up to news of the missile attacks?
Well, though these attacks were, this whole operation was basically very much anticipated. It wasn't very clear when it would start, and suddenly, it's like 8 in the morning on a Saturday morning, and the sirens start wailing all over. That's the way basically it was announced to the public here. Warning sirens were set off, so you thought, well, are the missiles flying or what's going on, whatever. And then we were all informed that there's an emergency situation that will be for the foreseeable future.
Is this for the greater good?
Is it for the greater good? Well, just now, in fact, I've heard President Trump has also joined in saying this is the aim of this. These attacks are to try to topple the Iranian regime. And Israeli sources, are quoted by the media, say, well, we're, trying to weaken the regime. I think that this is probably for the greater good, actually. I mean, look, we've seen how brutally the Iranians have suppressed protests against their government. At a time when people are really hard pressed there economically. I hear stories about, no water from taps in certain places, whatever. It's a very repressive regime. So it's difficult to say that it's not a good thing to try to bring down a regime like that. The only question, of course, is whether you can, whether it works to do that. I
mean, my question was going to be, do you have any concerns that you remove one brutal, repressive leader and you end up with another, even more brutal, repressive leader? We were discussing Syria earlier, and I was holding it up as an example where, regime change, it's looking promising. With caveats, and my guest Greg Colstrom reminded me, but it took 15 years of civil war to get there, brutal civil war.
Exactly. No, this is very true. This is very true. You don't know, certainly not in the Middle East anywhere. You don't know what you're going to get when you topple one regime. This is for sure. However, it's for sure that this regime is particularly dangerous in the region and for elsewhere in the world as well. So you come to make a decision. Well, which is the best of all evils, and this would seem to be the best of all evils at this point. However, of course, there are always question marks. What price is everyone willing to pay, and how long how deadly such a war could be. It's always better to try to do things without coming to using arms. However,
here to that. Now, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has had, from what I've been reading, many Israelis unhappy with the situation in Gaza. Is he going to receive political support? Is this going to be a popular move? Will this perhaps see more support galvanized around him?
Well, it really now depends on what kind of counterattacks are going to be forthcoming from Iran. I think a lot will have to do with that, whether there'll be a casualty count in Israel or not. That will play a big role here in terms of how, whether or not he will win back some of the public support that he has lost over the Gaza war, which has had very limited had very limited inroads, to say the least. It remains to be seen. Many Israelis are worried about seeing strong counterattacks from Iran, and great damage.
Lynn, just before I let you go, can you just give the listeners a sense of what the atmosphere is like where you are right now? I mean, we heard, people waking up to sirens. Are those still going on? What's it like there right now?
The warning sirens went off on a one-time basis already, like about an hour and a half ago. And since then, it has been quiet. The TVs are all on, special programming and, bringing remarks, et cetera, and some details. But the details are scanty. Besides discussing that the focus has been on attacks in Tehran. And I heard one report about casualties there in one particular building, which wasn't further identified. Aside from that, it's the information is very scanty, to say the least. And people are just sitting and waiting in anticipation. It's one of those uncertain situations.
I can't imagine. Alan Fisher-Ilan, you stay safe. Lovely talking to you. Thank you.